Hey, welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for tonight, um, October 30th, 2024. Today we're going to have a more or less of a group meeting and discuss and watch the 1954 New York Giants World Championship DVD to celebrate the last time the Giants won the World Series in New York. Before I get started, next week, we're going to have a change in plans. We have Skip Nipper. He's going to be on to discuss Henry Shenz. Steve, you want to tell everybody who Henry Shenz is? Unmute yourself, Steve. Steve, unmute. For a guy who talks all the time, unmute. Steve, unmute.
It told us to mute. I'm following directions.
Go ahead. You know what? You want to
He
tell
was
everybody?
he was the Navy guy that was with the Cubs, and the Giants got him, and he had that marvelous telescope. 1951. That's a good story, and you don't have to believe it, but I'm looking forward. I guess that's next week. You said
That's going to be next Thursday. So we've had Josh Prager, of course, but this will be Skip will be talking directly about Henry Shenz. Couple of other things. I was on last Friday on 9 online conference in Arizona, and the group, of course, was brought up. I was very proud to discuss that. I was also asked to speak in the Suffolk County JCC on December 2nd regarding this organization as well. If anybody's on Long Island and is bored, they could come hear me talk. Prior to showing the video, I'm going to ask people to raise their yellow hand, and they will discuss either A, being in the stands for the World Series in 1954, B, listening to it on radio, or C, watching it on TV. And I would be admiss. We have some celebrities here. The Honorable Judge Chacho is here, Chris Chacho. He is Johnny Antonelli's son-in-law. And also his grandson, Anthony. They're like the Secret Square show. When two guys couldn't fit in different boxes, they sat together. So those two gentlemen are here. And before you guys start raising your hands, maybe we could get a couple of words from each one of them about their famed relative, Johnny, who not only won Game 2, but saved Game 4. And we know his biggest fan in here is the other Honorable Judge Jim Mully. Gentlemen, the floor is yours before we get started with whoever else is going to speak about their experience in 1954. Welcome to the New York Giants Preservation Society.
Thanks very much. And of course, I'm here and Anthony's here because Judge Mully let us know about it. And but really excited to be here. My father-in-law, besides being a great baseball player, was a fantastic father, a fantastic father-in-law, and a fantastic grandfather, and just a man of immense grace and dignity and courteousness to people who would ask him questions about his baseball experiences, and he was sort of reluctant to talk about them for years until one of the local news writers and sportscasters put a microphone in front of him and said, "Johnny, let's just get you to start talking about your baseball stories." And he told a book's worth of stories that maybe some of you have, and they're wonderful stories about the Giants and about his experiences playing the other teams and his interaction with Willie Mays and some of the other players on the team. So he was just a fantastic guy. I'm sure my son Anthony can tell you a little bit too, but just relate one story. I went to a charity dinner and I sat next to Leslie Visser. And of course, here I am, I'm from Rochester. I'm sitting next to Leslie Visser. What do I talk about? So I figured I would pull out my trump card, which is I'm going to talk about Johnny Antonelli. And she knew exactly who he was and said, oh my God, my husband at the time, Dick Stockton, was his biggest fan. And every year she said, Dick Stockton goes to the Polo Ground site, and when he was alive, and has a moment of silent recollection thinking about the 1954 World Series. And I have a beautiful note from Dick Stockton and from Leslie Visser thanking me, and I sent them a picture of Johnny that he signed, and it was a nice experience. So I'm very grateful that I had him as a father-in-law, as a friend, as a golfing partner. He could hit a golf ball. He was amazing at golf. Took the game up when he was 30 years old, and he got down to about a 5 handicap with his eyes closed. But just a great guy, and we had at one time a whole trunk full of all the Rochester newspapers detailing that 54 season, and as big as he must have been in New York, you can't imagine how big he was here in Rochester. The headlines every day were about Johnny's exploits, and especially his exploits in the 54 series. So just a great guy. Thanks.
I hope you won't talk about Trump vote.
Anthony, you have anything you'd like to say?
Just second everything. My dad says it's pretty cool as a kid when you're first starting out following baseball and, you know, starting to read statistics and stuff, to have the first 3 pages of your baseball card binder just be your grandfather's cards and memorize those stats. The amount of times I've thrown out to people when they say, oh, your grandpa was in the majors, I immediately just recite his 54 stats. 21-7 with a 2.3 ERA. I try to predict how much he'd get in a contract if he was a free agent these days. But that was always, in terms of, say something cool about yourself. For me as a kid, that was always my go-to. Oh, my grandpa was a 6-time Major League All-Star and he did this. And the same thing, I didn't hear a lot of those stories until I was a little bit older. And we would kind of draw them out, little tales like how Sandy Koufax came up to the locker room and borrowed his glove one day, or how he and Robin Roberts agreed to pitch a game against each other in under 2 hours because they both had tickets to the Marciano fight later that night. Little stuff like that. And it's even cool now to this day where I walk into my first day at the local town court, and it's pretty fun to feel if you feel comfortable pretty quickly when the judge pulls you aside to chambers and says, your grandpa's my all-time favorite player and hero. It's just he was a great grandfather, just a great guy, someone we looked up to a lot as kids, someone we loved having around. And we miss him a lot, but it was, we still have all the stories, we still have all the memorabilia, and we have, all the testimonies from people that, like all of you that were such big fans. And, it's just always been a joy for me to read about him and read old columns from that time and read his stats and all that. So we miss him a lot.
We can't thank you guys enough for joining us. We hope you liked tonight's program. And his memory is still very much with us, thanks to your good friend Jim and a lot of the people here who saw him pitch. So thank you again for coming. And you guys should know that without question, that if he was still with us, I am very sure, and Jim Mully will definitely say it, so he would have done a Zoom with us and spoken to us on
Absolutely.
this very thing. So in the meantime, if you don't know how to raise your hand, there's a reaction button on the bottom. If you want to talk about being at the World Series, listening to it, or watching on TV, or even if you want to comment on what Johnny Antonelli's relatives just said. All right, we're going to start with Mars. Mars, go ahead.
Wait a minute. I just lost something here. Hold on.
Mars, you with us?
Yeah, I'm trying to oh, there we go. All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Number one, well, I think it was a weekday that the first game of the 54 World Series was on. And I remember
It was Rosh Hashanah.
pardon?
It was Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, but it was a weekday, right?
Right.
Right. So what I was about to say was the this time, instead of faking being sick to watch the World Series, my mom let me stay home because I got a good mark on a test earlier in the month. So I watched Mays' catch. And now, refresh my memory, was Antonelli pitching that game? Game one?
No, game two.
Game two, yeah. So I guess Magley started game one?
I don't know who started game one, but it was not Johnny Antonelli. Johnny
Okay.
Antonelli pitched game two.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention, I'm sure our guests are aware of it. When Johnny Antonelli went to Candlestick Park, he complained about the wind in the park, and he took a lot of heat from that. Would you like to elaborate on that?
I can elaborate a little bit. But
Infamous story in the family, yes.
so they first played at the home of the Seals, at the AAA team,
Oh, right, yeah.
and but the conditions were just as bad as at Candlestick. So he tells a story that he was pitching one day and he had a 1-run lead, and there were 2 men on base, and somebody had a pop fly that the shortstop came in for and called for, and the wind was swirling, and then the left fielder came in and called for it, and it went over his head, and eventually it went out of the park, and he lost the game because of it, and he was so upset, and he and his wife, my mother-in-law, they loved San Francisco. It wasn't the town at all, but he got really upset about the park. He popped off to the press about it. The press jumped all over him because, as he tells the story, they were very sensitive about the whole move to San Francisco, and they wanted good publicity and good PR. And he expected management to back him up, and they didn't back him up. And at that point, Johnny, being a guy who did not suffer fools gladly, I can tell you, said, "That's it, I'm done." And so he was there briefly when they built Candlestick, but it was really the same conditions were present in Seals ballpark. And that's where that incident occurred that got him to say, "You know what, I've got a great business back home. I'm going to go back home." And I think they, just follow up just quickly, I know they traded him to one team, and then he got traded to the Mets, and he didn't report to the Mets, of course. And
That was that.
and that was that.
Yeah.
So did this, the comment occur when he was pitching at Seal Stadium, or was it Candlestick?
I think it happened in Seals Stadium.
Well, Norm could probably attest that Seal Stadium was actually in kind of like a sun belt of San Francisco. I don't think it was very windy there, but Norm would know better because I didn't get out to San Francisco until 1967, so I never went to Seal Stadium.
Yeah, I only heard it from Johnny, so that was his story. Maybe it happened at Candlestick and his memory was fading. I don't know.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, before we turn over to Harvey, I want to introduce
I
one more.
fucking raised my hand here.
Hold on one second. Before we go to Harvey, we also have some giant royalty in here. We have Jeffrey Rhodes, Dusty Rhodes' son, the 1954 World Series MVP. His father is being inducted into the Staten Island Hall of Fame on November 15th. Jeff, you want to say a few words about that?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Sure.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Jeff.
Thank you. Well, I really don't know what to say. I never got out to the Polo Grounds, but I'll figure something out to say. I'll tell a story or something. I'm sure I have a few. He loves Staten Island, that's for sure. He lived there for like 20-something years. And he worked there for 25 years on the tugs.
So I assume that was by far his greatest moment was those games in the World Series he probably spoke about to you, correct?
Say that again, Gary?
I said I'm sure he spoke about his achievements in the 54 World Series to you.
Oh, absolutely. He just told me, he loved to tell stories, but most of them weren't about baseball. He just loved to tell stories. But he told me Monty Irvin and Willie Mays, he's from down south. They thought he'd be a big racist, and those were like two of his best friends on the team. And he really loved them guys. Even Willie, when I met Willie, when they brought the trophy to town, the first thing he said when I went up to speak to him with my kids was, "Man, I loved your father." And I told him, actually, my father loved you too, Willie.
Well, again, Jeff, congratulations on your father's upcoming induction.
Thank you.
Harvey, you're up.
Well, let me first of all say to members of the judiciary, may it please the court. I want to address a little bit about Johnny Antonelli through my conversation with Bobby Thompson. Johnny came to the Giants, as everybody knows, in a trade with the Milwaukee Braves for Johnny Antonelli, and I was lucky enough to have met Bobby Thompson, dined with Bobby Thompson, and had wonderful conversations with him. And one of them was Bobby was proud of the fact that he was traded for Johnny. He specifically raised that with me and other people who were present by saying the Giants wouldn't have won the World Series without that trade and getting Johnny Antonelli. So that's kind of circumstantial evidence that Johnny was a great friend and a great pitcher. Here's my story about the 1954 World Series. I had just turned 9, so you could do the arithmetic and figure out how old I am now. And then when you do that, let me know. It was Rosh Hashanah. And for those of you who don't know, Rosh Hashanah is one of the high holy days, and you're not supposed to watch television or listen to the radio or travel. And my family was a little strange. My mother was observant. She was an observant Jew. My dad was Jewish, but he wasn't so observant. He was a Giants fan. And we were in synagogue, and my father grabs me by the neck and says, "We're going home." And we go home. And now I was the cover for my father because my mother would never take anything out on me. And he turned the game on. We had a 12-inch Dumont black and white television. And I saw Willie's catch, and I saw Dusty's home run, and I understood but didn't understand. At 9 years old, I'm not sure that I knew anything. I saw the last out on television of the World Series, and what that did for me, I grew up in the Bronx. I was in the midst of a lot of Yankees fans who had predicted that the Giants would get the stuffing kicked out of them because the Cleveland Indians had won, help me out on this, 111 games. It was 154 World Series, regular season. And the Yankees won 104. So the Yankee fans were convinced that the Giants were going to get destroyed. Believe me, it made my childhood on the block. So that's my recollection of 54, and I'm sticking to it, but it actually happened, and it was a wonderful, and it still is a wonderful memory. Thanks, Gary, for doing this.
Thank you, Harvey. I don't know if nobody knows how to raise their hand. I see Michael Berlin and Russ. Okay, Frank, I'm going to include you. Anybody else needs to raise their hand and not know how to do it? Okay.
Gary, how do you lower the hand?
Just hit the same button. It says lower
Yeah,
hand.
okay. All right, got
Michael
it. I got
Berlin, you're up.
And unmute myself first. First of all, thank you for doing this. And God, I was a big Johnny Antonelli fan. Here's the irony. I grew up as a kid in Cleveland and Canton, Ohio. I rooted for the greatest team in baseball, the Cleveland Indians. We moved to New York City. My father took me to the second game of the World Series to see Early Wynn pitch, not Antonelli, but to see Early Wynn pitch. You know the rest of that story. I was so depressed that my father went out, and this is a gift he got me. I don't know if you can see this. This is the 1954 Giant yearbook with Willie Mays' signature. He said, you have to root for that. If you think Cleveland was the greatest team you ever saw, this team is even better, okay? I have suffered for the last 70 years because of this yearbook and that game. That's all I have to say. You know, I was a kid, the World Series, I was beside myself. It was incredibly exciting, and I couldn't believe we lost. I still can't believe it to this day. It was such a great team. But, you know, and we had our landsman, Al Rosen, playing, so, you know, a Jewish guy could play on Rosh Hashanah back in those days. Anyway, It was,
Michael, I'm glad you came into the light though and found the right team.
as I said, I've paid the price for the last 70 years, as you guys know.
Russ, you're up, Russ.
Well, I was a little too young to be at the World Series, and living the continent away, could not make it. But I was at that game that Johnny Antonelli blew up about. So it was 1959. My grandfather was a ticket taker at Seal Stadium, and later at Candlestick Park. But so I could go to pretty much any game that I wanted to, and so I was there that day. It was a nice warm day. I remember that, and it was Charlie Neal hit a home run, and I don't remember a whole lot about the guy going in and the guy coming out and so forth and so on. But I don't recall it being all that windy. It did pick up in later afternoons, but it's only 16 blocks or so away from where Oracle is now. So the weather pattern is fairly similar to what we have at Oracle. So I didn't think it was a terrible gust of wind that blew it out, but it was kind of a cheap home run. And Antonelli, I think, was the first person to come out and criticize the wind, and there was hell to pay in San Francisco. The fans never let him forget it, and he was gone, I think, the next year, traded for Willie Kirkland, if I recall. No, not Willie Kirkland. Who was it? Anyway, that was the game. 1959 again. Who was that?
Rocky Calavita.
No, not Rocky. No. But he was gone, and
I actually talked.
Anyway, that was it. But it was against the Dodgers. Charlie Neal. Thanks.
Thank you, Russ. Frank, go ahead.
First, even though Dusty's son-in-law and grandson didn't mention it, tell me if I'm correct. His real name was James Lamar Rhodes. Is that correct?
I get Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff, he's asking you a question.
Oh, I didn't hear that. What was that?
His real name is James Lamar Rhodes.
Yeah.
And
he gave me that middle name also.
And I saw Willie Mays' catch on Yom Kippur, but on the fourth and clinching game on a Saturday afternoon, I went to a more important sporting event. Gary and Harvey know the geography. My Lawrence High School football game, so I missed the clincher. I don't remember who we were playing and whether we won or lost. That's my piece for the day.
Thanks, Frank. Anybody else want to make any comments about seeing recollections of the game? If not, before I turn the film on, let's hear from the judge, the other judge. Judge, you're good friends with him. Anything you want to add about your good friend Johnny?
I'd like to add something about my friend Chris. So we were working at the public defender's office together. And the reason I became a Johnny Antonelli fan, and I think a lot of you know, he had a Firestone tire store in Rochester. And my dad bought some tires and brought home an autograph for me when I was about 7, 8 years old. So that was the first major league autograph I had, was Johnny Antonelli's. And so I was hooked, and I got a chance to meet Johnny years later. But that autograph meant a lot to me, but I had lost it. My mother got rid of it when I went away to law school. And Chris Chacho came into the office, and we were office mates, and he saw the Giants stuff on my wall and wanted to know how I became a Giants fan. And I didn't know his connection to Johnny Antonelli. So I told him about Johnny Antonelli and my missing autograph. And Chris said, I can take care of that for you. And he came back shortly thereafter with another autographed picture of Johnny Antonelli. So I always appreciated that, Chris. And but I got a chance to meet Johnny years later, and we had lunch 3 or 4 times. And just a great gentleman. And I loved listening to his stories. And it was just a great guy. And he's the best athlete ever to come out of Rochester, New York. And we love him in Rochester. And we'll never forget him.
And Jim, he would have been here, right?
Oh, he definitely. I had talked to him, when the Preservation Society. I first met Gary in Cooperstown, and and I had lunch with Johnny a couple times, and I talked to Johnny about going to one of these meetings, but it would have, been travel to New York, and he was a little resistant to go to, hesitant to go to travel to New York. I know if there was a Zoom, he would have jumped on that. And we didn't start the Zooms until COVID. But that was the one good thing that came out of COVID was Zoom meetings, and we get to bring Giant fans together from California, Alaska, and all over. So it's a great thing you did here, Gary, and I'm really glad Chris and Anthony joined us today.
All right, so I am going to, first of all, thank everybody for being here. I'm going to start film. If you need to go away and the game will start in probably half an hour. The film's like 31 minutes. We'll be around after if you want to discuss it a little further. But the film is also on our YouTube page. So, but this will be a sharper, clearer picture of it. So let me try to do this. And let's see. Giants Preservation Society videos, because this is a shared one. And scroll down to the 54 series. It'll play exactly what I was hoping to show you tonight. I don't know why this doesn't work. It shows up on mine and not on yours. So
Don't worry.
again, my apologies. Anybody?
The ironic thing in that, at least the first two games, when Dusty Rhodes pinch hit, he pinch hit for a future Hall of Famer,
Monty Irvin.
Monty Irvin. I don't know if they would do that now. I don't know, but it worked out. So, DeRocha.
Well, look what
win at all
Boone did.
costs.
Look what Aaron Boone did. He walked Mookie Betts for Freddie Freeman to load the bases.
That worked out.
That leaves no room for mistakes. What a bonehead move that was. The Yankees defense was horrible. Rizzo
I don't think Boone's a great manager, but I think
there's something to I have to add.
Well, why are you bringing in a pitcher who hasn't pitched in 30 days?
Aside from that, I thought, why do you move the guys to second and third? What they never said on television. Remember when Verdugo fell into the stands and the ump crossed his arms? They each took a base. And then he put Betts on first. They never said that on TV. I'm thinking, why do you move the winning run to second base? It was already moved there by the umps. So then you have a choice. Do you pitch to Betts or Freeman?
Oh,
you know what? And Roberts, he walked Soto to get the Judge. I know Judge is having a horrible World Series, but you're pitching a Judge. I mean, come on.
I got a 54 question for Harvey and Frank, since you guys would know the most about. If Dusty Rhodes was not the MVP, who would have won it?
Johnny.
Johnny Antonelli?
Why not? He had a win and a save and
a win and a save. Antonelli gets the MVP.
Yeah,
I would have got the Cy Young too.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. He got a win and a save in a 4-game series. That's 2 wins.
Yeah, here's an anecdote about Dusty Rhodes. In the beginning of the 54 season, they were going to drop him, but he added a lot. He was a spark plug with his sense of humor. He kept the clubhouse lively and upbeat. So DeRocha kept him, and look how that worked out.
Jeff, you mentioned Aaron Judge, the bad series he's having. I'm sure, I would assume some of the older guys, maybe Goldfarb, Harvey, etc. 1952 Brooklyn Dodger was 0 for 23.
Bill Hodges.
All the priests were praying for him in Brooklyn.
The thing is, the Yankees can't name Judge Mr. May. That's already taken.
Well, you know what? The judge has got to. The judge must recuse himself.
Well,
maybe he needs a raise.
Yeah. It's it's all. It was interesting. Like Gary said, he saved the 4th game. Antonelli. Nobody did that in those days. Bumgarner did in 2014. Came in the 5th game. I mean, DeRocha really, he took a major chance bringing him in. He wanted to end it, and he knew Antonelli was the guy. And
Antonelli was a pretty good hitter.
Yes.
And he drove in the go-ahead run in that game too. And I think the one thing that he's in the record books for is most home runs by a pitcher.
No, he's up there, but he always thought that the official record shorted him 4 homers. I think he's credited with 17.
I think Newcomb's up there. Don Newcomb.
Bumgarner just.
Drysdale,
Drysdale.
Drysdale's up
Drysdale.
there.
Even Warren
Drysdale.
Spahn was a good hitting pitcher.
Oh,
But
very
Antonelli
good.
was a good hitting pitcher.
Wes Farrell
that?
holds the record.
Who's that?
Wes Farrell holds the record. I
Wes
think he has
Farrell.
37.
How many?
Mr. Renee, go ahead, Renee, talk.
You know, with everybody, with some being involved in this, I like to know from the family, is there at least one or two like go-to stories that really like you can't you always love to talk about? Is there anything, one or two, that sticks out right away?
I wish I had gone through his book before coming on, because there are many stories. But the one that Anthony, my son, and I always tell, more because they're humorous than they are, historically notable, is the one where, well, Sandy Koufax knocked on the door of his locker room and said, "Can I speak to Mr. Antonelli, please?" And he said, "Sure. What what's going on?" Sandy goes, "Well, I forgot my mitt at home, and I know you're not pitching today, so could I borrow your left-handed mitt?" And of course, my father-in-law gave it to him.
Right.
The other story that Anthony alluded to was he and Robin Roberts were warming up at the Phillies stadium, and apparently the bullpens are next to each other. And Robert says, "Hey, by the way, I got tickets for the Marciano game, for the Marciano fight tonight." And Antonelli says, "Yeah, I got a ticket too." He goes, "Let's get this game over quick. We'll go over there." So they pitch. The game's less than 2 hours. They jump in a cab together, and they had ringside seats for the Marciano fight. Anthony, hearing the story, looked it up naturally, being a statistic hound. And sure enough, there was a Marciano fight the same night that Robin Roberts and my father-in-law pitched against each other. And then finally, Willie Mays came up to my father-in-law and said, "Johnny, you've got this great business back home." So Firestone had gone to him in 1955 after the series and said, "Look, we want to give you a Firestone dealership." And they started with just one store, and he would work the store in the off season. He would change the tires, change the brakes. He'd do all the stuff in the store, and he'd greet customers. And because of his celebrity status, they brought in more and more people. They ultimately opened up 24 stores. So Willie Mays says, "Johnny, you get to go home. You've got this great job. Poor Willie's got to scrounge for autographs and do what else." He says, "Look, I'll set you up with the Firestone people, and maybe they could do something for you out in California." And that's where the conversation was taking place. I said,
Wow.
"Okay."
Wow.
So Firestone meets with Willie and says, "Willie, we're going to set you up with a Firestone dealership, and all you got to do is give us your name, but we just want to ask very politely for some good faith money in the amount of $25,000. And Willie said, being a very proud man, obviously, if you've read his biography, which we have here, which is a wonderful biography, by the way. And Willie said, Willie Mays doesn't put up good faith money for anybody. And he turned him down on that basis.
Wow.
I got a quick question
Thank you.
for both the Rhodes family and the Chacho. Do any of you have possession of the 54 World Series ring, or does another family member have it? There you go.
This is a replica, so we have a replica. I'm not sure who's still Gail probably still has.
John Jr. His son has
Oh, Uncle John has it. So Uncle John has, but I would
48 and 54.
He would wear that ring everywhere, and it's my mom actually who notes all the time how garish the new rings have gotten when they're unwearable almost, but he would wear this ring everywhere. So you can imagine being a kid pitching in your little league game, and your grandpa's on the side wearing his 54 World Series ring, watching you and criticizing the poor catcher who couldn't, catch your balls in the dirt or something like that, and kind of grumbling to himself over there. But it was always special. I mean, he would wear this thing everywhere.
Wow.
And he would let people try it on. When I went to lunch with him, he let me try it on. I thought that was so cool. Then I heard someone else say later, yeah, he lets everybody try it on. It was great.
For our Cleveland fan, when I belonged to the Presidio Y, there was a guy from Cleveland, and he still, brings it up to me. He was a big Indians fan. He still brings it up to me. He's so bitter about that.
Jeff, do you know Jeff, any whereabouts of the ring?
The ring was lost in the early 60s is all I know about. He didn't really like to talk about it. We all got replicas, which is pretty cool, but I would have liked the real thing.
Yeah.
was
Bill
just gonna-
Plank, go ahead, ask your question.
Actually, this is for Jeff. I'm gonna bring your father back in his own words. This is a letter I got from Dusty on September 4th, 1990. He writes back to me. I asked about his memories of the series. He said, "Dear Bill, the reason Lopez didn't take Lemon out of the game, he was pitching the best ball of his life. Lemon was a sinker ball pitcher, and he wanted a ground ball. He hung a curve. The other two games I hit in was the first part of the game, and Lopez wanted to get a few more innings out of his two hurlers. P.S. The reason my stay was short in the big leagues was, number one, it's lonely at the top. Two, Leo was gone. Three, I couldn't stand our new phony manager." And he signs it JM, obviously there. I'm doing all right. I have a home in Boca Raton, which I'm going to soon. If you can write, I'll give you my address down there, Dusty Rhodes. And then he says, "I played golf at Sun City with Carl Hubble about 35 years ago. It's a very nice place to live. I have a brother who lives close by, also a son who lives in Yuma. Take care, and maybe I'll be coming that way soon." And here's a wonderful photo of, I hope you guys can see this. It's Dusty and Vic. Vic is looking at Dusty's bat, and he's kind of quizzically looking at it. I think knowing, how come my bat couldn't do what Dusty's could do? I think is what he's thinking. On Johnny Antonelli, I got a nice Johnny Antonelli photo. Here he is. I hope you can see it. He's climbing around with Davey Williams after one of the wins there, and he's choking. So, kind of fun things. That's what I like about photos. They remind us of the past, and what's better than the past?
By the way, did Antonelli come from the Boston Braves or Milwaukee Braves?
Boston.
What I thought, yeah.
And by the way, he and Kirkland, you asked about the trade. That was a key trade for the Giants because they got the guy that my mother lovingly called Old Blue Eyes, Harvey Keene. And Keene was an integral part of the 62 Giants, and they probably wouldn't have won the pennant without Keene.
And for
I'm sure
those,
Antonelli would have helped.
and for those who do not know, we did a Zoom a couple years back. It's great. Scott Petoniak did a great book on Johnny Antonelli. Russ, you're up.
Yeah, I was doing a little research on in Baseball Encyclopedia during a couple of the other chats. So the 54 World Series and the 2012 World Series are very, very similar in the fact that, the Giants came in huge underdogs in both of those series, and that the Giants pitching staff just shoved it up their butts, outscoring Cleveland 21-9 over those 4 games. And very, very similar to what happened with Detroit. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. So Sal Magley started game 1 in that series, and Lemon pitched a complete game. So anyway, just threw that out.
Thanks, Russ. Anybody else have anything they want to add before we let you guys go to watch the Yankees?
Well, I just have a question.
The Milwaukee Braves, not Boston.
Yeah, Milwaukee Braves.
Milwaukee Braves, yeah.
Oh, okay. Norm, one of our members mentioned that Seal Stadium really was, like I thought, in the Sun Belt, because I'm familiar with that neighborhood. And you went to Seal Stadium too, Norm. What's your opinion on the wind or the weather there?
Well, I mean, the weather there is much more mild than Candlestick, but it can get windy there also, just like Oracle Park. You can't really, sometimes when you're in Oracle Park, you can't tell how windy it is depending on where you're sitting. Once you go outside after a night game, that you're in a wind tunnel out there too.
Oh yeah, when I leave the park on a day game, it's almost like your cap's going to blow off. You're going to be it's the wind's going to push your body. It's so windy as soon as you get outside by the palm trees for a day game.
Yeah.
All right, so listen, I want to again thank the Chacho family and the Rhodes family for helping to save the night. And
Put
even
the
if we
Chachos
had,
on.
even if we had the movie, you would have saved the night anyway. So, guys did a great job. Again, everybody, my apologies. I practiced, it worked. But
We
you,
had a good session.
if you really want to watch the video, it is on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to it. It's a great channel. And we will reconvene next Thursday.
Can you put the Chachos on just once more so I can take a screenshot of it? I missed it last.
They're still there, Frank.
Put them on screen.
They're on the screen.
No, I don't see them on the big
Okay.
screen.
Let me finish talking first. So Skip Nipper will be on next Thursday with talking about Henry Shen's. Please make sure you don't take too much of your grandchildren's candy tomorrow. Enjoy Halloween. And we will see each other next Thursday. It was a very, very enjoyable evening, and we made the best of the situation. So
we'll have a new president-elect.
Thank you. No political comments here, Frank.
Thank you for
I am
having
going
us.
to
This was
stop.
awesome. Thank you.
Stop the recording, and if anybody wants to talk some Giant baseball or hang around before the game or during the game, we'll be here. So have a good night, everybody.